Welcome back to the Unrevealed Realities, the place where shadows breathe beneath everyday moments and where, in our secret chapters, we uncover stories that slip quietly between reality and the unexplained. Stories that begin like any ordinary day, and end with questions that refuse to fade. Today's chapter is about a family, a road, a moment that changed everything, and the unknown stranger whose presence still haunts every retelling of that night. It begins on a cool November evening, just after 7:46 p.m., when the Rahman family, parents, 2 children, and an uncle, were driving along an empty stretch of the Kara Highway, a place known for long bends, unpredictable turns, and the kind of silence that makes the world outside the windows feel much farther away than it actually is. They were returning home from a wedding, tired but cheerful, the kind of tired that carries a soft warmth. The laughter from the event still sitting lightly on their clothes, the smell of mendi, flowers, and late-night tea lingering in the air. According to the father, Ahmed, the road that night felt different, calmer, quieter, almost too empty. But nothing unusual enough to alarm him. Not yet. In the backseat, the children had finally dozed off, their heads leaning against each other in that unplanned comfort only kids fall into. The mother, Sana, kept glancing over them, brushing their hair away from their eyes. She later said that this moment, this peaceful snapshot, replayed in her mind 1,000 times, because she didn't know it would be the last calm moment before everything around them unraveled. The uncle, sitting in the front seat, was scrolling through photos on his phone, laughing silently at the ridiculous poses he'd captured earlier. Nobody noticed the temperature outside drop slightly, or the fog creeping in from the sides of the road like a quiet wave. These are the details people remember only afterward, in hindsight, when memory turns into investigation and every second suddenly feels significant. At 7:59 p.m., the car approached one of the widest curves on the highway. A place that had seen its share of close calls. The fog thickened so fast that the windshield turned from clear to ghostly in a matter of seconds. Ahmed slowed down, wiping the glass with the back of his hand even though he knew it wouldn't help. He flicked on the high beams, which only cut deeper into a white wall of haze. And then, out of nowhere, a pair of headlights appeared, bright, fast, and far too close. The family later described that moment the same way: sudden, blinding, silent. There was no screech of brakes, no horn, no warning, just the cold shock of danger arriving without sound. The oncoming vehicle, a large transport truck, was drifting into their lane, its massive shape barely visible but unstoppable in its momentum. Ahmed swerved hard. The uncle shouted something, though he never remembered what. Sana grabbed her children, pulling their heads down instinctively. The world tilted, the tires screamed, and for a split second, time stretched thin enough for everyone to taste their own fear. And this is where the story takes its first impossible turn. Because the family swore that in the middle of that chaos, just before impact, someone knocked on the back of their car. Not shouted, not waved, knocked. 3 sharp knocks on the trunk, clear and deliberate. At first, they thought it was an illusion, a thing the mind invents when fear blurs everything. But when multiple witnesses repeat the same detail, something strange begins to form in the cracks. Before the truck could collide with them, before the swerve could send them spinning into the side barrier, a man stepped into the fog. A silhouette, tall, still, impossible to ignore. Ahmed would later describe him as a shape that shouldn't have been there, standing exactly where the headlights were supposed to hit. The uncle said the man lifted one hand, calmly, almost gently, as if signaling them to stop. And somehow, without fully understanding how, Ahmed slammed the brakes at the exact right moment. The car skidded, slid sideways, and came to a trembling halt mere inches from the barrier. The truck roared past them, a blast of wind shaking their vehicle so fiercely the children woke up screaming. And when the dust and fog settled, the man was still there. Not running away, not shocked, just standing, looking at them with an expression none of them could later describe. Ahmed stepped out, shaken but alive, whispering, "Thank you," even before he reached the stranger. Sana, terrified for her children, leaned out the window and called to him as well, her voice trembling. The uncle turned on his phone's flashlight, pointing it toward the man. And this is where the testimonies begin to diverge. Ahmed insisted the man looked real, solid, perfectly alive. Sana said his clothes seemed old-fashioned, but she wasn't sure. The uncle said the man's face was familiar in a way he couldn't explain, though he swore he'd never seen him before. All 3 agreed on only one detail: the stranger didn't say a word. He simply nodded. Then he pointed toward a small, narrow service lane hidden by the fog. A lane the family hadn't noticed at all. A lane that wasn't supposed to be there. Ahmed hesitated. The truck was long gone, but he still felt danger lingering in the air. The stranger motioned again, firmly this time. Whether it was instinct or shock or some deeper force, Ahmed turned the car toward the lane. The engine rattled in protest as if unsure of the decision. Sana held her breath. The uncle kept glancing back at the stranger. And then, just as they turned into the lane, the fog parted like a curtain. They drove in silence. The children cried softly. The mother whispered prayers under her breath. The headlights illuminated a narrow path that twisted sharply upward, surprising them all. They followed it for nearly 2 minutes before it opened into a clearing, a small plateau that overlooked the highway below. And down there, visible from above, they saw the wreck. The same truck that had nearly hit them had collided head-on with another car directly behind where they had been. Metal twisted into metal. Sparks flickered. The night glowed with the brief, terrifying orange of shattered headlights. The other vehicle had tried to brake, but too late. The sight froze the family. None of them spoke for a long time. Finally, the uncle whispered, "If we hadn't turned, that would have been us." Sana squeezed her children so tightly they whimpered. Ahmed closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the realization of how close everything had come to ending. When they gathered themselves enough to move, Ahmed stepped out of the car again, heart pounding but full of gratitude. He wanted to thank the stranger, to bring him up here, to get him help if he needed it. The fog was lifting slightly, clearing the way. He walked to the edge of the plateau. He stared down at the road. But the stranger wasn't there. Not walking, not standing, not moving through the fog. Gone. He called out. No answer. The uncle joined him, scanning the entire stretch of highway below. Nothing. Sana stepped out too, gripping her shawl tightly around her arms. How did he disappear so fast? She whispered. Nobody answered. A truck driver who stopped after the accident later told investigators he saw only the 2 cars and no one else on the road. A local ranger who arrived minutes later said the same. The police recorded no pedestrians in the area. And the fog, it evaporated almost instantly, as if the moment had passed and taken something with it. Still, the Rahman family insisted they owed their lives to that stranger. And this is where their search began. A search that would take them back to the spot in daylight, to nearby villages, to old stories whispered by highway workers. A search that would lead them deeper into something older and stranger than anything they expected. A search that would end with a twist none of them were prepared for. Because the more they looked for the man who saved them, the more they discovered that they weren't the first ones he saved. And not one of the people he saved ever found him again. The next morning, long after the highway had reopened and the night's chaos faded into routine traffic reports, the Rahman family returned to the scene, not because they wanted to, but because none of them could sleep without understanding what had happened. The children stayed with relatives while the grown-ups drove back, hearts still heavy, minds still shaking. The fog was gone. The road looked ordinary. Too ordinary. The kind of ordinary that makes you doubt your own memory. Ahmed parked carefully, stepping out with a strange mix of dread and determination. Sana wrapped her shawl tighter around herself even though the sun was out. The uncle filmed everything on his phone, quietly narrating what they were doing, as if documenting their own confusion would somehow make it easier to solve. But when they reached the spot where the stranger had stood, something felt wrong. Not frightening, not supernatural, just wrong. There were no footprints, no tire marks, not even a patch of grass pressed down. The ground looked untouched, as though no one had walked there in days. The uncle zoomed his camera closer, scanning the area. He was here. We all saw him. Ahmed nodded, but his face showed what his voice didn't. Doubt creeping into certainty, bending memory into something fragile. Sana walked a little further, stopping at the exact curve where the truck had emerged. She stared for a long time, her expression hollow. If he hadn't stopped us, she whispered. Ahmed didn't need to answer. The truth hovered between them like a cold shadow. Still, they kept searching, down the highway, across the embankment, along the narrow service lane. They asked a small group of roadside vendors if they had seen a tall man in unusual clothing. Most shook their heads. One elderly vendor frowned, thinking hard. Was he alone? He asked quietly. Ahmed nodded. The vendor hesitated, then pointed toward the hills. Sometimes people say they see someone there. Near the old ranger posts. A man who appears during accidents. They say he moved here years ago, but nobody knows where he lives now. The uncle leaned in. What does he look like? The vendor shrugged. Stories are never clear, tall, quiet. Some say his clothes look old, like from another time. But I've heard this since I was young. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep the family searching. Over the next week, they traced every clue they could find. They spoke to rangers, drivers, even elders in nearby villages. Nobody could give a name. Nobody had seen a man like that recently. And yet, everyone had heard something. Small whispers, half-told stories, fragments that carried the same strange thread. A stranger who appears during accidents. A man who leads people away from danger. A presence that vanishes before thanks can be given. Some claimed he was a traveler who had once lost his own family on this road. Others believed he was a former ranger who died saving someone years ago. A few insisted he was simply a good Samaritan who didn't want recognition. But none of these stories lined up with dates. None matched descriptions fully. None felt solid enough to hold on to. And then came the twist that changed everything. On the 5th day of their search, Ahmed visited a retired highway officer named Farouk, who had worked in the region for over 3 decades. They found him in a small tea stall near the foothills, sipping slowly as though the world moved 3 steps behind him. Ahmed explained everything, from the fog to the crash to the stranger who appeared without warning. Farouk didn't interrupt. He didn't react. He just listened, with a stillness that felt heavier than the story itself. When Ahmed finished, the officer placed his cup down with surprising gentleness. "You're not the first," he said. Sana leaned forward. "You've seen him too?" Farouk shook his head. "No, but I've interviewed families who did. Only, their descriptions match yours exactly." A chill crept through the group. "How many families?" the uncle asked. Farouk looked out at the highway as though counting years instead of numbers. 7, maybe 8. I stopped keeping track. Some incidents were minor. Some were severe. But all the survivors insisted the same thing. A man appeared out of nowhere, at the exact moment that saved their lives. Ahmed swallowed. Did anyone ever identify him? The officer's gaze darkened. That's the strangest part. Everyone who tried, never found anything. It's like he doesn't exist. Sana whispered. Then who is he? Farouk breathed in deeply, choosing his words with caution. There's one story. Older than this road, but I never tell it unless someone asks me directly. Ahmed nodded slowly, signaling permission. Farouk continued. Decades ago, before this highway was properly built, travelers used a narrow dirt path through the hills. Landslides were common, and there was one incident, a tragedy. A man lost his entire family in a rockfall. He was the only survivor. Locals said he would wander the hills afterward, helping travelers cross safely. Some say he never stopped. Even after. After what? Sana whispered. Farouk hesitated. After he died, the family froze. Not because it was frightening, but because it aligned too perfectly with the silence, the vanishing, the feeling that something about the stranger belonged to neither present nor past. But the officer didn't say this with certainty. He said it with the tone of someone sharing a legend, not claiming truth. Still, the seed was planted. And seeds grow fast when mystery waters them. The family left the tea stall with more questions than answers. Their search widened. They visited the abandoned ranger hut in the hills. They studied old archives in the local council office. They spoke to villagers whose grandparents remembered the mud roads before the highway. Every story they heard pointed in one direction, a silent figure who appeared only in moments of danger. And yet no official record, no newspaper clipping, no photograph, no document, ever confirmed the man's existence. Until the uncle found something unexpected. While reviewing the videos on his phone, footage he had filmed the night of the near accident, he paused at a frame that looked wrong. The family had been climbing into their car, preparing to follow the hidden lane the stranger pointed toward. The uncle's camera had been shaky, but as he zoomed deeper into the fog, a faint outline appeared in the corner. A silhouette, tall, still, watching them. He played the clip again, frame by frame. The figure remained motionless, exactly as they had described. But here's the strange part. When the uncle stepped away from the recording and played it on a different device, his laptop, the silhouette disappeared. The frame was empty. He tried again on another phone. Nothing, only fog. It was visible only on the device that had captured the moment. Nowhere else. The more he replayed it, the more the image flickered, as if struggling to remain. By the next morning, the silhouette had vanished completely, even from his original phone. As if the moment had erased itself. Days turned into weeks. The family tried to move on, but their nights remained restless. Ahmed had trouble driving at night. Sana found herself looking over her shoulder in crowds. The uncle grew obsessed with the missing silhouette, replaying the video until even the pixels seemed haunted. Their curiosity slowly shifted into a deeper need, not just to find the stranger, but to understand why he appeared to them. Why at that moment? Why on that curve? And then, because mysteries often wait for the moment when people almost give up, the final twist arrived quietly. One afternoon, nearly a month later, the family received a call from the local ranger office. A hiker had reported seeing an old wooden marker on a hillside not far from where the accident had nearly occurred. The marker wasn't new. It looked weathered, worn down by decades of rain and sun. Carved into it, faint but still readable, were the words, "For those I could not save." Below it, another line, "May no family suffer what mine did." And near the bottom, barely visible, "I will watch the road." The ranger told them he had never seen the marker before. It wasn't on any maps. It wasn't part of any historical preservation. Nobody knew who built it or when. The writing looked old, very old. Ahmed stood before the marker, silent for a long time. Sana held his hand. The uncle filmed, but even he lowered the camera eventually, realizing the moment was too heavy to hide behind a lens. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint hum of distant traffic. The road stretched below them, long and quiet. And something about that spot, something in the stillness, felt familiar. As if someone had been standing there, watching, waiting, guiding. The truth they found wasn't the truth they expected. There was no name, no identity, no photograph, no proof the stranger ever lived, or ever died. Just testimonies from survivors, stories whispered through generations, a roadside legend carved into fading wood, and a moment on a foggy night where a family was saved by someone who left without leaving a trace. But maybe some stories don't need answers. Maybe some mysteries exist not to be solved, but to be honored. Because sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones who step into your life for only a moment, just long enough to rewrite the ending you never saw coming. The Rahman family eventually returned to their routine, but each time they drive past that stretch of highway, they slow down. They glance at the curve, and without saying anything, they whisper a silent thank you into the air, unsure where it travels, but certain it reaches someone. Someone who watches the road. Someone who arrives when danger moves too quickly. Someone who disappears the moment safety returns. An unknown stranger, a quiet guardian, a presence that might be human, or something just beyond it. And maybe, just maybe, this won't be the last family who sees him. Thanks for watching the Unrevealed Realities. If you enjoyed this secret chapter, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Because some mysteries deserve to be told, and some truths are hidden in the moments we almost lose.